Hello everyone, thank you for joining me again and welcome to any new viewers. This is To The Point English with Ben. I'm Ben and in this video I'm going to teach you 10 advanced collocations. Now the collocations that I've chosen for this video are useful for general English, of course. They're very useful to use in your day-to-day English, but they're particularly useful if you're preparing for an English exam, especially for the Cambridge English exams, whether it's the B2 First, C1 Advanced or the C2 Proficiency. Now, when you look up the meaning of the word collocation online or in a dictionary, you can find all kinds of technical definitions, but we're going to keep it simple for this video. And a collocation is basically a combination of two or more words which often go together. Okay, it's that simple. And they're particularly useful to learn because we use them a lot in English, and they can really help you with your spoken fluency and demonstrate a high level of English. And in fact, it's highly likely that you use collocations already. In fact, I just used one just now. Highly likely is a very common collocation. But the reason I say that these collocations are particularly useful for the Cambridge English exams is because it's what the examiners are looking for, really. They're looking for a wide range of vocabulary. And as I said, in real English, we use collocations a lot. We use these chunks of vocabulary. Now, before we start, I just have to mention that I've just launched my complete C1 Advanced Cambridge exam preparation course. I'm not very good at selling myself or marketing, so all I'll say is that if you find my videos useful and you're preparing for the C1 Advanced Cambridge English exam, you're going to find the course very useful. There's a special introductory price for the first few weeks. Check out the link in the description, and I hope you enjoy the course. C2 Proficiency and B2 First students, those courses are coming soon. Okay, but let's get on with the list of collocations. And number one, to wholeheartedly agree. Now I thought I'd start with a couple of collocations that are particularly useful for the speaking paper of the Cambridge English exams. And we often need to agree or disagree, so number two is going to be about disagreeing. But just to say I agree, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that, but sometimes you want to be a bit more expressive. And as I said, using collocations can really impress the examiners. So to say I wholeheartedly agree, it really adds emphasis because it means to completely and enthusiastically agree. So if your partner says something and you agree with them, and then just adding wholeheartedly before agree will just demonstrate a more advanced level of English. So let's look at an example. I wholeheartedly agree with your views on education. Okay, so we have to imagine that your partner has just said something about education and you really agree, you really strongly agree. Now often we just use wholeheartedly agree as a response. You don't have to expand more. If your partner or whoever you're speaking to says something and you agree, then you can say, oh yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And you finish there, you don't need to expand. But often we want to, especially in the exams, we want to give more information. We don't want to just stop after agreeing. Okay, number two, as I said, it's about disagreeing. And I'm going to be honest with you, my first choice of a collocation was vehemently disagree. To vehemently disagree, which means to really passionately and enthusiastically disagree. But then I thought, actually, we don't use that often, and I can't imagine many situations where you're going to use it because it's quite extreme, it's quite strong. So the collocation I'm going to teach you, in fact you have two for the price of one now, is simply to respectfully disagree. To respectfully disagree. So that's just a polite way of saying that you disagree, of course, and it's very important to be polite when you're disagreeing. I mean, maybe if you're having an argument you can be more emphatic and you can say I vehemently disagree, but in the Cambridge English exams and in most situations in your life, you're going to need to be polite and respectful. So I respectfully disagree. So again, the same example as number one, I respectfully disagree with your views on education. Or again, you could just say as an expression, as a response, I respectfully disagree. Again, in the exams, I recommend you expand on that. If you just say I respectfully disagree, you're not really taking advantage to give more content for the examiners to mark. And actually I recommend in the Cambridge English exams in the speaking paper to disagree more than you agree, if possible, because it just gives you more things to say. If you only agree all the time with your partner, it's very difficult to add content and vocabulary. You often just find yourself repeating what your what your partner has said. So be prepared to disagree. And number 3 is a very useful and advanced collocation, and it is to extol virtues. To extol virtues. And to extol virtues basically means to praise the qualities of someone or something. So as always, a couple of examples to make sure you really understand the meaning. I always extol the virtues of making an emotional connection when thinking of examples of new vocabulary. Those of you who have seen any of my past videos on vocabulary, you know I repeat that a lot. Make an emotional connection, because it's very useful. So I really extol the virtues, the positive aspects. I really highlight and praise the positive aspects of making an emotional connection. Now, I've also found an example on Twitter, and I wanted to use this because I think it's very useful for you when you have vocabulary or expressions that you're not really sure of the meanings or the use. It's good to see them in real context, in real life context. So you can just use the Twitter search option, and you can find lots of examples of these, in this case collocations, that people have used. So the example I found to extol virtues is, he is the best person to extol the virtues of a wider community of nations. Now, this Twitter user was referring to Boris Johnson, and I imagine sarcastically. Okay, number 4 now. To forge relationships. To forge relationships, or to forge a relationship. And this means to make a big effort to create a strong bond with someone, to create a strong relationship with someone. So it requires an effort. So an example, the UK must forge relationships with new trade partners. Okay, another quite topical example from the news, but the UK must forge relationships with new trade partners. And number 5 is a very useful one. It's inextricably linked. Now, this one is particularly useful for your writing, but also for your speaking. In fact, all of these collocations that I'm teaching today are useful for both speaking and writing in the Cambridge English exam. So inextricably linked refers to 2 or more things which can't be separated. They have an essential connection. So an example is, climate change and poverty are inextricably linked. Climate change and poverty are inextricably linked. So these 2 things, climate change and poverty, go hand in hand, basically. If one increases, the other increases, unfortunately, in this case. It's not always negative, it can be positive, but in this case, of course, it's negative. Another example which I found on a recent news article is, food is inextricably linked to your mood. So this article is suggesting that what you eat, the food that you consume, has an essential connection to your mood. So an inseparable connection to your mood. So whatever you eat really affects your mood. It is inextricably linked. Okay, let's move on to number 6 now. To render speechless. To render speechless. And this means to surprise someone, basically. To really surprise someone. In fact, surprise them so much that they can't speak. Not usually literally, but that's the idea. So it's like to leave them speechless, to make them speechless, or to leave them lost for words. But to render speechless is a particularly advanced way of expressing that idea. His lack of empathy rendered me speechless. His lack of empathy rendered me speechless. So this person who is speaking is saying they were shocked, really surprised by this person's lack of empathy. They just couldn't speak. Again, probably not literally, but they really want to emphasize how surprised they were. But it can also be used in a positive context. So you could say, she was rendered speechless by his lovely comments. So someone gave this person some lovely comments, and she was so surprised in a positive way. It was so lovely that she couldn't speak. Again, not literally, but she was rendered speechless. Okay, number 7 now. To scupper plans. To scupper plans. Now this basically means to cause a plan to fail, to not be successful. Now, it's quite interesting that the word scupper, which it's not a very common word. In fact, the collocation is more common than the word on its own. But the word scupper it refers to a hole in a boat originally, but also could be in the side of a building, which allows water to drain out. So it's a very specific word. But as I said, now it's much more common to hear it in this collocation. So to scupper plan. The storm scuppered our plans for a barbecue. So we were planning to have a barbecue, a nice idea to have a barbecue outside in the garden, but a storm came and it ruined our plans, it finished our plans, it scuppered our plans, it put an end to our plans. Another quick example, the Prime Minister's plans to invest in education were scuppered by the recession. Okay, so the Prime Minister had big plans to invest more money in education, but those plans had to be changed. They couldn't go ahead due to a recession. Moving on to number 8 now. A scathing attack. A scathing attack. Now this means a very critical or even unkind attack on someone. Now not physical, it's not a physical attack of course, it's verbal, and it's often used to refer to politics or politicians, and you can imagine why, I guess. And my first example is about politics, and again it's taken from a real newspaper headline. Starmer launches scathing attack on Truss minutes after PM election. So Starmer is Keir Starmer, who is the leader of the opposition in Britain, the Labour leader, and Truss is of course Liz Truss, who has just been elected at the time of making this video, has just been elected as the Prime Minister. So Starmer took the opportunity to launch a scathing attack on Truss immediately, minutes after the election. Another example in a different context, the football commentator launched a scathing attack on the defender. So the football commentator was extremely critical and even unkind to the defender. Maybe the defender had a terrible match, so the football commentator launched a scathing attack. As you've probably noticed, I've used the same verb in both examples, to launch a scathing attack. We often talk about launching an attack. It's another collocation, so we can use all of the words together. It's like using 2 collocations in one. So to launch a scathing attack. Very common to use those words together. Okay, number 9 now. To be blissfully unaware. Blissfully unaware. That's referring to when you just don't know about something unpleasant. So something is happening or something has happened, very bad, very unpleasant, but you don't know about it. You have no knowledge. You are unaware of it. You are blissfully unaware. Many people are blissfully unaware of how the poorest societies in the world live. Okay? So many people are blissfully unaware of how the poorest societies in the world live. So many people in developed countries, in rich countries, don't know or don't have a knowledge of how the poorest people in the world live. So they live blissfully unaware. They can continue their lives blissfully unaware. Okay, the last one now, number 10. To rekindle a passion or love. And this means to have strong or positive feelings about someone or something again. Again, because it's rekindle, not just kindle, but rekindle. I read a riveting book recently which really rekindled my passion for literature. So this person must have had a passion for literature in the past because it's rekindled. But maybe in recent years they've stopped reading, or they've lost the love or passion for reading literature. But they read a book, a riveting book recently, and that rekindled their passion. So kind of reignited the fire. So now they're in love, or they have a passion for reading again, reading literature. So it's positive. Okay, I hope you found those collocations useful. As always, write your own examples, think up your own examples, use an emotional connection. And if you have any other collocations that you think are particularly useful, share them in the comments. You can help other people, and in the end we can build up quite a library of collocations. Okay, I'll see you very soon for another video.
Starmer launches scathing attack on Truss minutes after Starmer launches scathing attack on Truss minutes after Starmer launches scathing attack on Truss